Some people think that hypothyroidism just falls out of the sky. And the purpose of this video is to explain the 4 different factors that are contributing to hypothyroidism from a functional perspective. I mean, for so many people, they didn't have hypothyroidism when they were 15, 20, 25 years old. But it seems like as we age, get into those middle years, more and more people develop the classic hypothyroid signs. The purpose of this video is to show you the 4 different components that are contributing to that, because when you understand what's causing your hypothyroidism, then you can begin to make the steps to turn that stuff around. I'm Scott Resnick. I'm a medical doctor, and I believe that the future of medicine is in individuals like you learning how to care for themselves without conventional drugs and turning around all aspects of health using functional thinking. And today we're talking about hypothyroidism. Now, in order to understand what the thyroid gland does, we need to take a trip back in time. And I think it's important as we think about our health to address our health from an ancestral genetics perspective. What do I mean by that? I mean that our body is running on these ancestral genetics that have kept us alive as humans on this planet for some 400 or 500,000 years. The problem is that there have been so many changes in our modern world that we still haven't quite adapted to these changes. So we're running on ancestral genetics. And one of the important things that our genetics do is to keep us alive. And it does that through managing our energy. So it's important to be thinking about our energy in a triad of hormones. And this is cortisol and insulin and thyroid. So think about insulin and cortisol as being either adding energy or taking it away, but thyroid hormone is our thermostat. And it makes sense because ancestrally, if we couldn't find food, if our cortisol was high and we were breaking down our body to stay alive, we would want to move to a relative state of hypothyroidism. It's important to realize that thyroid hormone needs to be considered within this triad of cortisol and insulin as well. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, if you're starving in your cave, you've got a finite number of calories tacked onto your body. You'd want to drive your body to a lower metabolic state. So what happens is when our cortisol is high, it impedes the way that thyroid hormone is made across a number of different parts of its production. It impedes the way that TSH is released from the brain. It impedes the way that the cells in the thyroid gland make thyroid hormone, and it also impedes the way that T4 is converted into T3 peripherally at the tissues. But yet there is more, because when we're in a high stress, high cortisol, effectively fasting state, our body moves to more reverse T3. These are all measures that are put in place to help to conserve energy and keep us alive. Why? Because we're running on ancestral genetics. So let's do this. Let's take a trip from 400,000 years in the past to the current times, because we need to be thinking about environmental influences that our ancestral genetics haven't had to deal with in the past. There are a number of different factors in our environment, whether it's dietary or whether it's the presence of toxins that are influencing the way that our thyroid gland works. So one of the more common toxins to which so many of us are probably being exposed is fluoride. I mean, we know that a similarly negatively charged ion, fluoride, substituting for iodine in the thyroid gland, is going to be affecting the way that our thyroid gland makes thyroid hormone. And it's interesting because we're also learning that there are a number of environmental microbes as well. So bacteria like Klebsiella and viruses like Epstein-Barr virus, these have all been shown to create some degree of cross-reactivity. It's called molecular mimicry between these bugs and our thyroid gland, possibly stimulating something like Hashimoto's thyroiditis. The next thing you need to be thinking about is your nutritional state. And we know that to make thyroid hormone, we need tyrosine, which is the backbone amino acid. We're typically not low in that. We need iodine, iron, and vitamin C, and glutathione as well. What's interesting is that many of us are deficient in iodine. We don't eat enough seafood. We don't eat enough seaweed and plants that are more concentrated with iodine. And another thing which is interesting is that in the continental United States, at the time of the ice ages, basically those glaciers scoured all these important minerals from the soils. So there are a number of people who are actually iodine deficient who are then in a hypothyroid state as a result of that. The next thing you need to be considering is your immune state as well. And I alluded to this a little bit with the environmental toxins. But what happens is that there are a lot of people in the continental United States that are suffering with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And it's been estimated that something like 8 to 12% of Americans have antibodies to Hashimoto's. Now, these antibodies are TPO and TG stands for thyroid peroxidase and thyroglobulin antibodies. Ask for them at your doctor by name, and if your doctor won't order them for you, just order them for yourselves online. Because you need to know if you are making antibodies to your thyroid gland. It's important because one of the greatest risks of developing an autoimmune disease is having an autoimmune condition. So know your autoantibodies. So those are some of the most important things that we need to be thinking about to really get our hypothyroidism under control. So if you want to approach your thyroid health from a functional perspective, address those different categories that I mentioned in this video. And if you guys want to know where you are along the spectrum of health to wellness with a functional perspective, I've put together a really cool functional health assessment, which is listed down in the description. Now, this is free. It takes about 15 minutes in the privacy of your own home and uses some basic tools you'd find around the house. But what this does is what will give you an insight into your overall state of health from a functional perspective. Because when you know where you've been, you can know where you then need to go. And as always, this is YouTube, so if you are still with me in this video, I would encourage you to, well, first, go to this next video about cortisol so you can understand how it works with thyroid. But be sure to like and comment and subscribe, and I will see you guys in another video. And take care.